I gave very little away.
And you, of course, as a sportsman, have enjoyed an enormous level of success because you were British Open champion, you won tournaments all over the world, you were the world champion several times. Do you miss that level of competitive sport? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people now will recognise you and wonder, I wonder what happened to Jonah Barrington. I mean, you still play tournaments or just coaching?
I'm basically involved in coaching. I'm very competitive in what I'm doing on court with the youngsters I take. They've got to earn their spurs. I'm not going to sort of hand it on a plate. And obviously also in the back of your mind lurks the desire to be competitive and to be competitive again. But I think that the reality of where you are and the fact that obviously your philosophy does change as you get older. It took a long time for my philosophy to change.
Yes.
Because I was playing on circuit when I was in my early 40s, and my wife did despair.
Yes.
Because she wondered when it was ever going to end. And then my body started to terminate.
Yes.
So that sort of brought that to an end.
Because I think somebody tells me that, I mean, you did have some quite serious physical problems, didn't you? Was it your hips particularly?
Yeah, I had a lot of operations in my 40s and 50s.
You're the bionic man now, then?
Well, I've had some good parts. Medical science has been very good for me, and thank God for it. Been very, very lucky. I was obviously blessed with a very good constitution, and I didn't really get injured in the way that I might have in my sort of late 20s, early 30s, because my generation wasn't a sports science generation. We didn't spend half an hour in preparation stretching for our matches and warming up and ensuring all was well. We also played with equipment that wasn't necessarily conducive to protecting the feet, and at the same time I think my training program was not only more savage than everybody then, but I still maintain, and will probably to my dying day, that my training program was quite a bit more savage than the players of today. That's not to say that I don't think that they train hard. They train actually very productively and in many ways more intelligently because of the sports science. But on the other hand, too often sports science determines that there are an enormous number of rest days.
Right.
And I was told a long time ago, or I read it, that to rest is not to conquer. So I didn't believe in resting very much.
Didn't take rest days?
No, I didn't think in resting very much because I knew that time would possibly run out. You do become aware of the fact that it might not be forever. So it was important to seize the opportunity and to take advantage, particularly when your opponents on the opposite side of the world might be taking a rest day.
I mean, marvellous. Looking back, I suppose you would hopefully think that you've had the most marvellous career. Things now, 40 years on, isn't it, since you first started playing? I mean, would it be a good career now for a youngster looking at squash and thinking perhaps he's got ability and thinking about taking it up as a career?
Well, sport is a great career. I mean, sport is fantastic for so many reasons. I mean, being here and seeing all the kids on the court running around, I mean, that's what should have been happening decades ago in this country.
Because you've been doing a clinic here this morning, I think, haven't you?
I had a clinic this morning, and I've done clinics in many different parts of the world, obviously. And in the 70s, when we had the squash boom, kids became much more present around clubs, and then as the profile of the sport faded in the mid-80s, late 80s and through the 90s, it seemed that whether it was neglect, whatever it was, my own sport became very stagnant. And at the same time, sports that were still had the value of good finance, your own sport, tennis, still weren't attracting.
No.
youngsters in multiples, whereas they obviously were in Sweden and they obviously were in France, in many countries where you find at the top end there are very successful world-class performers.
Was this, again, excuse my ignorance, back then in the 60s when you started, was squash an elitist game?
Very.
Yes.
It was just like it was just as tennis was. I can't comment on tennis now, but squash was tended to be played in tennis clubs, with tennis clubs. So the people at the beginning were very similar. And the attitude was very much traditional. I'm not knocking traditions, but where traditions inhibit development, then I think the traditions should be very rapidly thrust aside.
Well, we've got a lot of traditions here, as you know. The East Glos Club, I think, has been established about 118 years.
Yes.
And squash has been a big part of that club. And hopefully with all the new developments, we're going to see continued interest, renewed interest in squash here. People like you coming to see us.
Well, I do hope so. But just coming in today and seeing all the kids running around outside on the tennis courts, and I thought, well, if that was mirrored all around the country, we wouldn't be just hanging on for Tim in the second week of Wimbledon.
That's right.
And we would have a clutch of players like the Russians have. And I'm absolutely sure that there are many reasons, the weather, etc., etc., etc. But one of the prime reasons why we haven't been successful in tennis, and also because of the cold draft that we've had in squash, is because clubs have not set about very proactively getting kids involved in junior sections and making it fun for them.
I hope that's going to change a lot. Jonah, I know a lot of people want to talk to you, and I can only say thank you very much indeed for talking to us. And
very enjoyable.
Lovely to see you at the East Gloucester Club.
Yes, and the very best of luck with the development.
Thank you.